And we're going. Okay, and we're live. Hello and welcome to Fermenting Opinions. I'm your host, David Popeiden.
And I'm your co-host, James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions, the podcast in search of a more palatable political ferment. Today on Fermenting Opinions, this is episode 12, we have with us Mariah Phillips, who's running for U.S. Congress, the District 4 in Tennessee.
That's right.
She is currently, this is the primary round, and if she makes it through that, she's going to be going up against Scott Desjardins, the incumbent there. And we're here to talk to her a little bit about why are you running, what do you hope to accomplish in office?
Sure, excellent. Well, thank you. My name is Mariah Phillips, and I'm a teacher, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, and now I'm a candidate for Congress. I never, anticipated in my life that I would be putting myself and my family into the situation to run for political office, but I should have known all along that this was in my future. Political involvement has been in my family for generations. My mother was on the school board growing up. My first campaign event was a Jimmy Carter rally when I was 2 weeks old, and my mother let me she let me skip school and go with her to go visit with Bill Clinton when he came. He was running for president, and we had actually had a hospital that closed in our community, and so he was running on a healthcare platform. And so I was able to shake his hand and meet him when he ran for president the first time. But even going back into my grandparents' day, my grandmother worked for John F. Kennedy when he was in Congress in Massachusetts. So it's been something that my family has always had a tradition of being involved in, and so I'm happy to be here, and I really feel that I have the wind at my back, and I'm doing good things running for Congress now. So why now? Well, I'll tell you. Actually, in January, I had a good friend of mine who was an employee for me many years ago at Starbucks, and he called me up and he said, Mariah, you need to run for an office, and he said we need more strong women to step forward and get things done in Washington. And of course, when he first said that, I said, no way, not me, and but I started thinking about it, and once that idea kind of drops in your head, it kind of sprouts, and so I started thinking about whether or not that was something that was possible, and kind of evaluating what steps would be required to run. And it's kind of strange to just jump into Congress. I definitely recognize that. Yeah. But when I started evaluating the different positions that were available, and there are many, and what I thought I actually had a chance to be successful in, through some of the resources and the connections that I have, this actually seemed like a possibility. So I just decided to jump in with both feet, and back in May, I filed my paperwork to run for Congress.
So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's I feel like jumping in on the deep end.
It is.
Yeah, I feel like if you're trying to make this decision, you're looking at the list of available things. It's like being at the steakhouse and looking at all these different steaks you get, and you're like, yeah, you know what? Give me the porterhouse. I want the big one.
Absolutely,
yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I was a political science major in college. I've always believed, engage and pay attention to what's going on. I've voted in every election, state, local, federal election, since I was 18 years old.
Same.
And because it's important, right?
It is.
We need to get involved and be active in getting our voice heard. And so, honestly, when I looked at what I felt like the biggest need was, we need to change the conversation in Washington. The divisiveness that's happening in Washington right now is tearing our country apart.
Oh, yes.
And that it's happening on every level. But my county is actually doing pretty well. We do have some events coming up. We have the area around me, the school district's doing pretty well. The needs of my community actually are moving in a positive direction. And
for reference, what counties and stuff like that is covered?
Yes, sir. So actually, I'm a teacher in Rutherford County, and I live in Rutherford County.
That was going to be my question.
And so I've been there since 2006, and absolutely love the community there. And so again, when I decided, I'm a problem solver, and so when I looked at what problems were really needed to be fixed, Washington was where it was, and I had some connections and some resources that really I saw a path to making that happen. So
I like it.
yeah,
Very
thank
cool.
you.
That's
Thank you.
That shows a lot of initiative there.
Because
I mean,
really,
seriously,
most
well,
people
yeah.
would think like, oh, maybe I should run for, county commission
Yeah.
or city council or something like that, and you just
Exactly.
bypass all
Yeah.
the local
No.
level problems, because
And there are problems at all levels.
Oh, sure,
but,
Of course. But we do, I mean, at least coming from the Murray County perspective, we do a decent job of keeping our stuff running properly. I mean,
sure.
we're not having any massive budget windfalls. No money has gone missing. Nothing like that. So far the government runs on its own fairly well.
Right.
We maintain a status quo. We're a pretty conservative county, but
Yeah.
other than that, I mean, it's not like we're out here trying to lead the charge and doing some kind of bathroom bill thing or something like that.
Right.
it's helpful for now.
Yeah.
I mean, the Tennessee legislature, don't get me started.
Well, yes, of
That's
course.
a-
We
that's
can
off
have.
topic, but-
I mean, we can have that conversation at a different point. But I like the idea that you saw the path and said, you know what? Actually, U.S. Congress. That's where the noise happens. That's where the meat. That's where you make the sausage, essentially.
Yeah,
That's right. And you know what? I mean, we need to have good people running in these positions. And when I filed my paperwork, there wasn't anybody else running for this cycle, and I filed very early, so that's not unusual. But actually, I'm a Democrat, and but there are Democrats across the country that are stepping forward for the same reasons that I am, right? So right now, and I think there are Republicans as well that are stepping forward
yes.
for the same reasons that I am, because we need to change the conversation. We need to end the divisiveness, and we need to get back to working together and solving problems. Because even though I'm a Democrat, I know that the world doesn't stop and start, on the left. I might start there with some of my values and ideas, but you know what? We need to end working together and solving problems. When our nation's biggest problems were solved, it's when people work together.
This is true.
And so, so that's what I'm about. That's what I've always done in my community. That's what I've done for my students as a teacher. And, when I see a need, I go out and try to tackle that and find the resources to make that happen. So that's what's really driving me to run. So I'm out here, every day, pounding the pavement, shaking the hands, kissing the babies, raising the money, doing everything that I need to do to run an effective, successful campaign. And I just, I feel very strongly that there's nothing more important right now than ending the divisiveness in Washington.
Yeah, it's funny because it's pretty much the same thing that motivated us to start this project with this podcast.
It is.
That, we hated the idea of this divisiveness, that each side resides in their echo chamber and just ascribes the worst attributes and motivations to the other side, and it's just not realistic.
Sooner or later, you've just got to sit down and have a conversation, no matter how much you've learned to despise each other over these identity political, leanings and whatnot. There, I mean, you've got to learn to work with the other side.
Absolutely,
you have to. It's
Absolutely.
mandatory.
And right now we have a situation in Washington where Democrats won't work with Democrats, and Republicans especially won't work with Republicans, right? So we have, and Scott Desjardins is part of the House Freedom Caucus. He refuses to work with members of his own party. Refuses to work with members of his own party. And so right now we're seeing in Washington, in the Senate, we have Corker standing up. We have other people standing up and saying, this is not what I signed up for. Right? This is not going to help us solve our problems. And whether or not they agree with the policies that are coming forward, if Republicans won't work with Republicans and Democrats won't even work with Democrats, how can we expect people to work together?
Exactly. And I think in the short term it's worked out with all of the attempted repeals of Obamacare, of the ACAs, because the Republicans can't even get their ship straight.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're so fractured.
Well, it depends on what you mean by works out.
Well,
right? It works out. As a
Democrat,
I believe that it works out that it hasn't been repealed.
That's what I'm
right?
saying. Yeah.
And, I'm sure that there are many Republicans that would say it hasn't worked out because it hasn't been repealed, right?
But they couldn't even go straight repeal. I mean, my man Rand Paul is standing out here saying the exact same thing he's been saying all along. Like, can we just throw it away? Please, that's what we all campaigned on. That's what we all talked about. Now you want to go through this rigmarole of creating another broken system that by all means appears to be worse than the one we've got now.
Right.
When we could just scrap the damn thing and start over. But
But would that be worse? I think that I would beg to say that would be worse than what we have. And so that's the problem. Until we can get into conversation and work together across the aisle, we're not going to, and actually do that with legitimacy.
Yeah, I agree.
And intention of purpose, we're not going to solve our problems. We're going to, stay
unless we
in our
can
corners.
sit at a table and be genuine about trying to find some kind of agreement. Because I would argue that we could scrap Obamacare, no problem. But you were right. If you just throw it all away, exactly. Throw it all away. What happened? What happens? So you've got to come down with a step down program.
That's right.
Thing, like weaning a drug addict off of junk.
That's exactly right.
You got to go steps at a time.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Policy-wise, healthcare, where do we go from here? This seems like the perfect segue, really. Right.
Sure. Give us a little bit about your kind of just, I guess, platform on healthcare.
Sure.
I've got some questions for you based on what I've read, but
I do believe that where we are as a nation, where we are with healthcare, is that we've actually forgotten that it's about healthcare, and we have been focusing on health insurance and not health care, right?
We're putting the cart before the horse.
That's right. Doctors are not doing a bad job of taking care of patients, right? Yeah. Patients want to be taken care of. Yes. What's getting in the way is the health insurance companies and the pharmaceutical companies that are actually determining what kind of care we can receive. Yes. And that's been the problem for a long time, right? And so when we look at health insurance, I believe that health insurance and the way that we have it set up now is really what's causing these problems. Okay, so I would say we are moving closer to moving towards a Medicare for all system.
The single payer type of system.
That's right. I think that actually makes the most economic sense for our nation, for our working families, and it also makes the most kind of moral sense for our communities. Okay. So I have a daughter who had to have knee surgery. Now, I've always had health benefits from my employer. My husband, he's a self-employed musician, has never had health insurance in his life. He's never had a job, right, with health insurance available. So I've always had to carry that burden for my family, and I've done so gladly because it was a need that we had.
Sure. I mean, that's one of the benefits of being married is that you get certain legal benefits out of it, like sharing benefits.
That's right. And so I see my daughter needed knee surgery a couple of years ago, and one of the things that was interesting was I changed jobs at the same time that she needed knee surgery. Yeah. Now, I changed employers. My health insurance from one employer ended September 30th, and my new insurance kicked in October 1st.
I know exactly.
My daughter had knee surgery. My daughter hurt her knee playing sports in high school. She played soccer, still plays soccer. She plays at the collegiate level now. But she actually tore her meniscus on September 27th.
Yeah, I know where that headache's going to go to.
Right, so I have to say, thankfully, the pre-existing condition regulation for the Affordable Care Act had gone into place.
Yes.
Because I would have had to either pay COBRA and pay two insurances.
And COBRA's insane.
And COBRA's incredibly expensive.
No, never used it for that reason.
It would have been cheap. It would have been cheaper than the knee surgery that I would have had to pay for then out of pocket, because it would have been classified as a pre-existing condition, right? So, so who makes that determination? Insurance companies.
Yes.
Insurance companies bound by my employer to pay certain things
by an agreement, a contract.
That's right. That's right.
So this leads me to a great question, though.
Sure.
Because we're talking about a lot of moral issues here. We have a healthcare exchange. We have an insurance system because it's really the most cost-effective way to manage the cost of healthcare, right? I mean,
is it?
Well, so far, I would say that's what the market has determined, at least. If you're going to have a way, it's something that you pay for and you get guaranteed benefits out of when you need it.
Sure.
I mean, you're going to have some type of insurance program. It's a risk cost analysis system, Obviously, the system's ineffective. We're talking about the whole thing. But that is the system because it makes the most sense and it keeps the cost as low as possible. I mean, that's the goal of insurance, is not necessarily the cost of what you charge your consumer or your insured, but the cost of healthcare money actually spent by the insurance company. I mean, they're trying to get a profit out of this, right?
Sure.
And so that leads
Isn't that the problem?
Isn't that the problem?
But anyway, what that leads me
they
to the
don't
point
make
of
money if they
money actually.
pay up.
What I was going to say was money actually spent. I think it was about 2015 when this figure came out that we actually spend, and insurance companies do pay, is around $1.7 trillion per year. That is the cost of our healthcare system as a whole right now.
Okay. What did you say?
7 trillion.
Okay.
I mean, as we know, that's larger than the budgets we pass every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
How do we cut that cost down to a point where we can actually afford to pay for it as a nation?
Sure.
I mean, because God knows we can't balance a budget for crap. You know, the thing is, the debt that we already have is insane.
So right now, what we are paying for in that $1.7 trillion is we are paying a middleman to handle our healthcare needs.
Okay.
We are paying to keep the lights on at the insurance company. We are paying to pay the administrators of the health insurance companies to pay, you know, for their salaries. And while we do employ quite a few people in the health insurance industry, we are paying them a lot of money in many cases, you know, millions of dollars.
This is the nature of administration, though. I mean,
it is. In a private system, it is the nature of.
Even with the government, I mean, we have a lot of administrators. We hire a lot of employees that are federal employees that do nothing but administer.
Right, but there's a narrower stratification of pay grades within the government. That,
sure.
You know, you're only going to see the people at the top making X amount of money. There's still government employees at the end of the day.
I fully understand.
It takes,
what you're saying.
I mean, some seriously top brass to, you know, even make things.
No one's making more than $1 million a year at any position, period, in the federal government.
But that is not the case in the health insurance industry.
Exactly. Okay.
And so I think that when you look at, and I haven't broken down the numbers, so I don't know exactly, you know, how much of that falls into the administrative costs and how that would be different if it were handled through a single payer system. But I do believe that does raise the costs of our insurance company, of our health care.
Called cost of doing business.
So that's right. Yeah. And so you have private companies, insurance companies. I mean, even some, you know, privatization of hospitals and things like that. Like, you know, we do have a lot of people making a really good profit off of my daughter's knee surgery. Sure. And off of your,
yes.
you know,
I don't have health insurance because I can't afford it. But.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. You would under our plan.
Yeah. Let's see what that does to my taxes. That's my first stickler.
Yeah.
What's it going to cost me? And what's it going to cost our country?
So you don't have health insurance right now.
No.
So
you don't have any health insurance?
No. Zero.
Okay.
Haven't in a year and a half, 2 years.
Well, I will say a prayer for you that you remain healthy and don't need it. So
that's the game plan.
Yeah.
You know,
and do you have health insurance?
Yeah, I do.
You do.
Through my employer, yeah.
Yeah. So
it's not very good.
I have employee-based care as well, like I said before, and I always have. And every year my costs have gone up. Mm-hmm. Both through my deductible, and also through my employer, right? So, yes. So costs have continued to go up, but what I receive has continued to go down, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So, and so this was one of the things that was supposed to be fixed with the Affordable Care Act. That wasn't.
Yeah, we obviously
right?
know that it backfired
we know that it wasn't.
Yeah, it's more like the Accessible Care Act. Really.
I wouldn't call it affordable.
I wouldn't. Yeah, I would not call it that either. But so, you know, when we look at how much money an individual pays, so I have on my insurance, and I'm, you know, very blessed that I have employee-based coverage, but I'm married and I have 4 children covered under my plan, right? So so when we have, you know, we meet our individual deductibles, you know, every year, and we have responsibilities over that. I mean, we definitely have out-of-pocket expenses that come. I have 2 kids that needed braces. I have, I have my daughter with knee surgery, etc. So we pay I should know this number off the top of my head.
I was going to ask you that number. I'm going to
say we pay. I know I figured it out this one time, but it was a while ago and I didn't write it down. But it's something like 25%
$1,000 a year.
No, I was going to say 25% of my income or so on healthcare.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
25 to 30% of my health currently in our current
that's
system.
my concern,
right?
is that if we do this, we're really just going to transfer that cost to paying the government to do it. But it's still going to be a huge chunk of our taxes.
But if it's the same, if it costs me the same amount, and you can be insured for my same amount, I would rather help you get your health insurance and pay the same amount that I'm currently paying than, continue on the system that we have now, where it continues to go up every year.
And I think that's a nice thought. I mean, it is.
Well, thank you.
Well, there's no. I don't want to get into a but with it, because I'll be the first conservative to tell you I love the idea of single payer, but I want it paid for, like it actually, without raising my taxes, and without increasing our debt. If we can balance the budget to make it happen, awesome. I would also like the quality of care to at least remain the same, if not get better. I don't want to see a fall in the quality of care. I don't want to see, the rumored Canadian months-long waiting list to, for simple surgeries.
We already have that. You don't know that because you don't have health insurance, so you don't go to the doctor. But when we have simple things, we already have months-long waiting lists.
Oh yeah.
So if there is a need that's not an emergency, if I need to get a physical for my children, I have to schedule that out months in advance.
Or if you need to go see a specialist
or if you need to go see a specialist, you have a rash. I mean, it takes weeks already to get it.
I don't want to add to that burden.
Sure.
I don't want to increase taxes, and I don't want to increase debt. If we can do all of those things, there's no reason we can't afford single-payer system. It's like balancing a budget at home. You can have nice things when you can afford to pay for it.
Absolutely.
And
I've gone through many years of not having nice things because we couldn't afford it.
which is basically the realistic. That's the realistic view of healthcare.
And that's why I worked 2 jobs most of my life, so that we could eventually have nice things. But I think that there is a way through having conversation that we can solve these problems.
Definitely.
Right?
I say hire the accountants and start balancing the budget. Let's get it done. If it's the goal, it's like designing a building. You have to pay an architect at some point and actually start making plans before you start laying bricks. Which I think was the problem with the ACA, was that we slapped together a massive law in no time, in secret, passed it overnight.
Well, that's not quite how it works. It wasn't
quite that fast.
You know that's not really how it works.
Exactly. But there was not nearly enough. There was not nearly enough time and study into it, because it has ended up costing us way more money than we thought it would. And it has ended up being way more inefficient than it was proposed.
But don't you think it's because there wasn't an honest conversation between Democrats and Republicans to actually solve the problem?
I would say so.
And so what happened was the Democrats tried to put together a bill that is nothing like the bill that Obama really wanted, right? Yeah. Nothing like the bill
because
that the
Democrats really wanted.
Well, because
he was.
But they ended up not doing it anyway. They just didn't have the Democrats on board.
So they tried to put together a plan, and I would say that there was, from the beginning, a lot of pushback.
There was definitely a huge concerted effort to block it.
Right? So not even pushback, but just a straight block.
But it comes from basically my perspective again, is like, how much are you going to add to the debt for something like this? Like what?
So let's have a conversation about it. Let's actually sit down and try to come together, because I don't know that there's any, and maybe I'm wrong, but I can't believe that there are Republicans out there that don't want Americans to have health care. Right? I mean,
their constituents certainly want health care.
Of course, how many?
And that's a big reason why so much of this has failed with the repeal, because even Trump ran on I'm going to preserve Medicaid, Medicare. He said those things, and because that's what
Trump said he said it's going to be affordable, it's going to be easy to get, and it's going to be available to you, and that's what Trump said, and that's what people voted on. And I have my brother, when I had a conversation with my Republican brother, and he said that's what he wanted, right?
So let's, instead of just talking about single payer and this pie in the sky idea, let's talk about how we can. But I mean,
with our current Congress,
yes, exactly.
And then that's why I'm running.
But realistically, let's talk about working, I guess, to improve what we have.
Okay.
You got to start with baby steps at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We can't just be throwing something together and we learned that from the ACA, and we've learned that from the Republican attempts to replace it.
Yeah.
That's garbage too.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this proposal that Trump's got, or I guess, did he use an executive order to make it happen, supposedly? But the idea of selling insurance across state lines, because that is part of the real regulation.
Which I don't think was ever prohibited, though, was it?
No, but it was. States had prohibited it. Federally, it was not.
Yeah, some states have prohibited it.
Most states have, because states keep a huge monopoly on their insurance companies, because that's how they make money. You know, like and the insurance companies basically lobby to regulate themselves within their own state. Do you think there's a benefit to doing this across state lines? Do you see some kind of benefit there, or do you think it's just kind of like, for lack of a better term, pissing in the wind? You know,
good term
or phrase.
I mean, I think, you know, when we saw when car insurance became available to sell across state lines, right? That wasn't always available, and you can do that now.
And your risk and cost is just associated with what state you live in,
right? And so I'm not really sure that makes one difference one way or another.
It does cost wise. It certainly does. When you change up your insurance pools, the bigger you make it, both the more and less risk you carry.
And I think one advantage could be to that in the state of Tennessee is we know that insurance companies are actually leaving because we didn't take the expansion.
Because it had the name Obama on it.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, it would help Tennesseans quite a bit if we did that right now, because it would actually expand options, which, you know, would make it available.
Sure.
For Tennesseans, which it currently isn't, but or we're losing that access. I still would go back to the argument that we're still then using taxpayer dollars to supplement the insurance companies, which was still the original argument that I had. But I mean, I could see that there could be advantage to that. I don't know that
that's more of an idea of putting a Band-Aid on the problem of cost for consumers.
Right.
You know, the idea of making healthcare more affordable. That's kind
I think it would make it more accessible. I don't know if it would make it more affordable.
Well, that's the idea, is to I mean, health insurance is always going to be accessible right now under the ACA. You can't be barred by pre-existing conditions, things like this. You can get it if you can afford it.
Unless they all leave Tennessee.
Well, sure, but yeah, and the idea is that if you open it up across state lines, the costs actually go down because they're playing with a bigger risk pool.
Sure. Okay.
You know, it's not like Tennesseans are notoriously unhealthy, for example.
Yes.
We are a very unhealthy state. Health insurance in Tennessee costs a lot more than it does in like New Hampshire or something like that, where the risk pool is much lower. You know, and that's a contributing factor. That's the reason why Obamacare is failing anyway and not being able to pay for itself, is because people like me are saying, I'm not paying that much money for this insurance. I don't need it. You know, I'm 30 years old. I don't have health problems. Why the hell would I pay that?
Yeah,
it's funny. And a large portion of
my 16-year-old daughter who had knee surgery, we didn't think that she would need it either. But.
Sure, but I'm just saying that the large portion of the people not carrying health insurance are doing so simply because of that reason.
Sure,
they're all young and they can't afford it.
And that's actually the reason why a lot of people hated the individual mandate part of the ACA. But that's exactly why they had it, because young people who are healthy and don't otherwise, unless something catastrophic happens, you're not going to want to buy health insurance.
And that increases the pool. So it actually goes back into the same argument that you're making for
increasing across state lines. Yeah. But if you make it more affordable, more of us would buy it.
Maybe.
You know,
or maybe you wouldn't. Because
I certainly would if I could afford it. But it's outside of being. I drive a brand new Cadillac. It costs more than that to have cut rate insurance.
So it's interesting that you would rather drive a brand new Cadillac than take care of your health.
Yes.
I hope you don't get into a car accident.
Well, I don't the problem is I don't use the services. You know, it's not about just being like cheap and saying, well, I don't want to
I understand.
But it's just a matter of it's not cost effective for me.
I understand.
It's a bad investment.
Yeah.
And I try not to make those as best I can.
But it's, the other side of it, it's an inevitability. Like,
it is.
It is a basic human need. Everybody needs health care.
I agree with that. Yeah. And that's why I don't really have a problem with financing it if it's paying for
itself.
Because
they're young and stuff like that now.
But yeah, of course you need it.
But eventually everyone's luck runs out.
And I don't want to see, elderly people who can't get things paid for. Obviously you don't want to see your neighbor dying or sick.
Right.
Like that's just inhumane. I mean, you don't wish that on other people.
Right.
So it's definitely a goal worth working towards. I think you're just the cost issue enters there.
So I think that we could all agree, actually, that we all want people to have insurance, but we just need to figure out how to pay for it. And I think there are ways to make that happen. And I think that with the amount of money that most working families are paying currently that have insurance, you know, that might mean somebody like you might have to increase your taxes a little bit.
Of course, it's always me.
Well, because you're not paying for it now, right?
Yeah.
So for me, for somebody who has it, I'm just transferring my, I would just be transferring my costs. But for somebody who doesn't have it and doesn't have that expense, it feels like you're increasing that expense because technically you are.
Yes,
right?
I suppose so.
If you're not paying
You
it
are,
now.
I mean.
Yeah, well, it would be for me.
Yeah.
Sure, yes, it definitely would. And the only other thing I would touch on that, you know, we don't have to get into, but the only other drawback that I see the idea of a government-run, basically health insurance program is that we already are complaining about how much it costs to administer it privately, but part of that cost is for efficiency. The federal government is notorious for losing money and spending it poorly and mismanaging every dollar they touch.
Yes.
How can we ensure that the massive amount of money it's going to take is going to be used properly and not end up in, you know, say Congresswoman Phillips' freezer, you know? That's a shout out to William Jefferson from New Orleans, guys. But yeah.
And that's a really good question. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why people hate government and hate government programs, right? And that's
they're very inefficient.
They are, and I'm not going to disagree with that. I think that there are definitely fixes with the efficiency. I think it does take a group of people to make that a priority and figure out how to make businesses more efficient. I mean, businesses are efficiently run, not insurance companies right now.
Why don't we just hire a bunch of libertarians?
So why don't we?
But even with, I mean, arguably, that's a good idea. But
I'm just saying, right?
I mean, but there are people who specialize in this, right? So I work for Starbucks as a part-time job. I've done that for 21 years, and I only work 1 day a week. They're a great company. It's just hard for me to leave, but and they good coffee.
Right.
Anyway, one of the things that I know that they've invested in as a company, and if I remember correctly, one of you work for where do you work?
At King's Daughters.
At King's Daughters. Okay.
Yeah.
Somebody I was talking to wasn't you obviously works. At Spring Hill GM plant, right? So I'm trying to remember who it was.
Was it Mark?
Irrelevant.
I think it was probably Mark, tall guy.
Anyway,
let's not get into that.
Yeah. But there are businesses know how to run things efficiently, right?
yes, it's again cost of doing business.
Right, exactly. So so there are ways that businesses can learn how to run things efficiently, and I think that the government could benefit from learning that expertise as well.
I would say
and so,
yes.
you know, Starbucks, and this is where I was going with that, had made investments over the years to figure out how to make lattes faster, right? So they've invested money in figuring out how to make lattes faster.
How to be more efficient.
How to be more efficient, how to take care of their customers better, you know, and going back to the bureaucratic idea, that's what it's supposed to be, right? I mean, that's in the plan. We actually are supposed to. The reason why we have a bureaucracy is that everybody's supposed to have a specialty, and that specialty is supposed to handle that one issue, and so we don't clog up the wheels with everybody's issues. We know, everybody in this country knows that's
not how it works.
Happening, right?
We haven't performed enough routine maintenance on the machine; it is falling apart.
So why don't we do routine maintenance?
I have no idea. I would call that term limits in Congress personally, but that's. You know, that's just me. That's routine maintenance.
Idea.
You got to replace parts every now and then.
Yeah, but it's not just the people in Congress. I think that we do need to evaluate how we're spending our money in each of the departments. I think that in every department in our government, there is opportunity for us to eliminate some waste, and there's an opportunity for us to eliminate.
Definitely.
Right? And so I don't know that there's anybody that disagrees with that. It's just a matter of, are we going to make the investment to figure out where that is legitimately without cutting things that actually hurt our citizens.
Environmental regulations, because it's
who needs them?
Yeah, right. Who needs clean air or water?
Right. Yeah. So we can't just cut the EPA.
Right. Well, some people think so.
Well,
but
some people think so.
Realistically, we can't do that because we
just
want our country, our children can grow up in.
But here we have the EPA, and there are still people in Detroit who are not drinking clean water.
In Flint.
In Flint, I'm sorry, in Flint that are still not drinking clean water. Or in Puerto Rico, who, you know, several weeks after a hurricane,
Exactly.
still 80% of the
US citizens,
don't have electricity or clean water, and they're drinking contaminated water. So there definitely are some ways that we can become more efficient. But it does take investment on the front end to figure that out. Yeah. So I am not opposed to figuring that out. But again, I mean that goes back to, are Democrats and Republicans willing to work together
at real solutions
and to find real solutions that we all have? And I would say right now, no. And that's why I'm running.
No.
Fair enough on that end.
It's a great answer.
It is a good answer. It's a great answer.
Thank you.
What else were we going to talk about? I think we were going to get into, because I mean, I think we've kind of covered the healthcare end. We were talking about education as well.
Yeah, I think we wanted to go on.
Speaking of eliminating regulations.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Do you teach for a public school?
What's that?
Do you teach for a public school?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So you have a unique position on this already.
I do.
So you get bird's eye view of where federal money goes
and wasteful spending, as well as great needs that aren't being met. Right.
Yes.
So both sides.
In your platform, I guess on your website, you can drop that website. What was that website? What's the URL for that? Because I don't remember.
MariahForCongress.com.
Okay. I checked that out today,
yes.
and I was reading into that. You talk about the current administration threatening academic enrichment, like the arts, special education, teacher training, things of that nature.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Like, what threats do you see specifically?
Well, it's really interesting because just this week there was an announcement that 72 regulations were and advisements were removed from the education platform, specifically special education.
It's the guidelines, right? Is that what it is? The federal guidelines?
The federal guidelines
for essentially.
And so it's interesting. I've been doing a lot of kind of digging and not finding a lot of details. And so what concerns me about that is, if you're going to announce that you're making 72 cuts to regulations and advisories, then you need to let us know, I think, kind of even a list of
I was just about to say, I'd like to see the list of the regulations cut, because that could be a good thing, depending on what they are. But
it could be a good thing, but we don't know what they are, right? So, so I know that, and I actually pulled this up in May 2018.
2017, this year.
May 18th, I'm sorry, 2017. Yes, I'm sorry. There are, this analysis was published, and I pulled this up to kind of pull out. The 2018 budget is cutting, let's see, $5.9 billion from education, mostly from special education, and I think this is what is happening right now, right? Okay. And we don't have the details of what has been cut, but so we're cutting things like preschool programs that with Head Start programs and things like that, which have shown to provide opportunities for reading enrichment and improvement for low-income
definitely.
children.
I mean, I don't see anything wrong with preschool programs. Might as well start teaching children early.
Yes, and so Head Start programs, preschool program funding is being cut in the 2018 budget. We are losing things, the community learning centers, which support before and after school programs, because the statement was made that those proved to not be effective, and I have to say, as a parent of several children, there are several benefits to before and after school programs,
especially for working parents who may not get off of work until 5 p.m. or something.
One of the reasons why actually we chose to move to Murfreesboro is they have a fantastic before and after school program, and as working parents, both my husband and myself, as working parents, we definitely have taken advantage of that, and we supplement that with our income, right? And
sure.
There is some income-based payment.
Okay.
So for families who can't afford,
it
there's
gets subsidized.
Exactly. And so, so the school program actually starts at 6 a.m. And my kids, I have one kid that's eligible for it now, who's still in elementary school. He can go as early as 6 a.m. They feed him breakfast, and he's supervised at the school until school starts. And then after school, they provide enrichment opportunities, and he does Lego robotics and he has, you know, he is on the basketball team, and they're, you know, they have supervised programs.
Yeah.
Until 6 o'clock in the evening. So, of course, he's not there from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. But,
sure, but
if you have to work in Nashville,
but I mean that's still
and you
a
have to
realistic
drop,
thing.
you know, you have to drop your child off in order to get to work at 8 o'clock.
It's a valuable program.
It's incredibly
valuable.
valuable. And so, so I think that, you know, cutting the subsidies for things like that eliminates working families from either being able to work. A parent might decide that they can't work, or at least not the same kind of job they would have with, you know, without this available program, or you would have children at home at third and fourth grade unsupervised.
Yep.
And that's also not good.
No, yeah, that's really
so
not,
you know,
not
so
good.
these are the kinds of programs that that are important. I also mentioned that some of the art programs and band programs, Bledsoe County cut their, which is in the district, cut their band program because they couldn't pay for it. Now the parent, you know, the Booster Club got together and actually found the funding and got enough support to get that back in the budget and back on track for this year. But
and that's good for them, but how many other places are not going to be able to do
that's
that?
exactly right. And so, you know, when you're cutting...
Clearly we don't need to cut a band program, you know.
Well,
but if you hate the idea of public education, if you're Betsy DeVos, and that's where this is all coming from, if you're Betsy DeVos and you just want everyone going to voucher schools, like, this is how you do it. You grind public education into the dust by these kinds of budget cuts, by repealing these regulations, these guidelines even. You know, the guidelines themselves, they just outline what the law is supposed to provide.
Right.
Yeah.
And now we're creating legal vagary.
I want to see what was cut before I say cutting regulations is a bad thing.
Well, I do as well.
I would ask if you know specifically on the Head Start programs, things with the after school care. Do you know what portion of that $5.9 billion that takes up? Because I love the number $5.9 billion being trimmed from the budget.
Sure.
That's very attractive to me.
So this was for the Community Learning Center, which is the before and after school programs, $1,164,000.
So a large portion of that goes to the after school programs. Okay.
You have the full service community schools, literacy programs. I love the description about cutting the literacy program.
Did they misspell something?
No, that would have been great. That would have been great. But it says school districts and schools that choose, you know, this is focused on low income, providing libraries and current books to low income communities. It says school districts and schools that choose to focus on libraries and the provision of free books as part of their early literacy strategies may use Title I funds for this purpose. Now, okay, but that means that the Title I funds that are being used for other things like school lunches and you know, other resources will have to be cut as well. So it's not like you're just moving this money; you're taking away from something else to provide books. For literacy programs.
Exactly. No, I mean, I agree with you. That's the danger of balancing a budget is you have to cut what you can.
Well, if you're cutting the budget, then you have to.
Yeah. And look, we all agree that there's fat that can be trimmed from the education budget. But where? You know, and I personally...
Right, because we just
went over $1 billion for this community care stuff.
You're like, oh, that sounds good. Bands sound good. Early learning programs sound good.
Exactly.
But at $1 billion, does it sound as good, right? And so maybe that you're going, wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So there, you know, there definitely is some fat to be trimmed. So one of the things that that actually is a huge expense on our school districts, which is a federal program, actually is testing. Right?
We can definitely axe that.
So, and I have no problem with accountability from an accountability perspective. As an employer at Starbucks, I was a manager for many years, and we had many measures of accountability, right? I think that teachers should be kept to a very high standard. I think that we need to have ways to track that. But I know that the hundreds of millions of dollars that the state of Tennessee has paid some of that federally funded
for gateway funding, which is insane because that test is ridiculous.
Especially when the tests haven't been valid for the last 3 years.
Exactly.
The first year was canceled. The second year,
it's just I completely agree with you there.
So there
if you
are
want to cut
ways.
something, cut statewide testing like that. That can go.
There are definitely ways. There's the NAEP test, which already exists. The NAEP test actually selects different schools in a state to do state-by-state comparisons. It takes 1 day to deliver the NAEP test, and it's a great state-by-state comparison. That's how they can compare.
Sure.
You know, the ACT. The ACT already exists. My daughter started taking the ACT. It takes 4 hours to take the ACT.
Well, you pay for that yourself. You know, I don't know if.
But it would be a lot cheaper to pay for the ACT for every other year for students than it is to pay for the tests that take 3 weeks of academic time to deliver,
and then destroy curriculum anyway because you have to teach the test.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
so you're preaching to the choir on that one. That is one of the dumbest wastes of money.
Yeah. Again, I don't disagree with the idea of accountability, but there are definitely other ways to measure, and this goes back into working together to find solutions, and having people and electing people.
It's really a giant negotiation. What are you willing to get rid of? What can you live with losing? What can you live with, or what can you not live with losing? You know, I mean, that's really the question, and you've got to do that on both sides.
Absolutely. And you can't just say no.
Yeah, because doing this right here, cutting just $5.9 billion and losing even $1 billion program in there. I mean, that is a very, very valid program that should exist, in my opinion. If you're going to have public education, you probably ought to have some after and before care as well for working families that, where both parents have to work. Think about the
economic impact of that.
Exactly.
That's single parent homes.
I'm fine with that. But we got to talk about, hey, no one likes standardized testing, right? Like, let's axe that. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
And it doesn't provide a valid,
metric for any. All it does is punish teachers.
Yeah, and students.
Well, sure. I never cared when it was decap time or whatever.
How many students? I mean, I basically have to rely as a teacher. I have to rely on my students. I teach high school, so I have to rely on my students having enough respect for me today to want to perform well for me today.
Yes,
and stay awake. Yeah, and stay engaged on a test that's going to take them 2.5 hours.
Yeah, that they don't really care about.
Yeah,
no, and then it reflects on you.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's gone.
Yeah.
If I'm in charge, if I'm waving the magic wand,
I'm going to vote for you. What are you running for?
I'm one of those people, though, when it comes to budgeting, that if I see something I don't like and you're not selling it to me, like the after-school care program, get rid of it. Yeah. Who cares? Disenfranchises a third of a percent of a population. Whatever.
I think that what is important, and I think
that's how you budget, though.
Yeah, I think that what's important is, I come from a very working class background.
I do too.
And so, like I said before, I've worked 2 jobs most of my life to help my husband, develop his small business as a self-employed musician, and he's worked. He actually has about 4 different jobs right now. So not only, he actually is a professor at, he teaches at Vanderbilt 1 day a week. He teaches at MTSU 1 day a week. He tours, and then he does some studio work here locally. So he, we are hardworking people. And most of the people that I've talked to across this district are hardworking people. Right? They're going to do, just like me, they're going to do whatever they have to make ends meet. Make sure their bills are paid, make sure their kids have better opportunities, make sure they can pay their health bills when they come in, right? Make sure they can, take care of the things that they need to take care of. And most of the people that I talk to, are those people, right?
Yeah.
Hardworking people.
Sure.
Especially in this district where the average, wage is like $33,000 for a family, and so people are working hard to take care of their families. So the people that are in Congress right now, overall, are not those people.
No, not at all.
Right? So
maybe a few of them.
A few of them, right? So the people in Congress are not those people. The people in Congress are not people who, they're very far removed from the days of having to work 2 jobs. Right, they're very far from the days, right? So when you look at, I really believe that we are in a place right now that people are connecting with people like them, right?
Yeah.
We have a lot of people stepping forward who are, like us, right? Who can't afford health insurance.
Exactly.
Who have to put their kids in after school, and before school care because we got to work, a couple of jobs, right? So, so there are a lot of people across this nation that are identifying people like us. I actually just received my first national endorsement this week, which I want to celebrate.
Absolutely. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So,
just tangent.
So, the endorsement is through the People's House Project. And so the People's House, I'm one of the first 4 candidates that they've endorsed. They'll be endorsing 20 this cycle, 2018. But they're endorsing union guys. They have an iron worker. They have a...
Is that the guy going against Paul Ryan?
Randy Bryce, yeah.
Yes.
So,
that guy's cool.
Randy and I are endorsed by the same, group.
There you go.
So I'm just saying, we haven't met yet, but we will. I'm gonna, but we'll be talking, absolutely. But but there are people stepping up, and there are people that are supporting people like us that are stepping forward. So I received this national endorsement because I get it. I know what it means to sit down and pay your bills and figure out your budget, right? My husband just came off the road the other day, and we were talking, and I was like, all right, we need to sit down and do the budget, right? There are not people in Washington that are worried about how they're going to pay for their kids' after-school program. There are not too many people in Congress right now that are worrying about how their kids are going to pay for their band program. Do you know why? Because they take private lessons if they want to go to band.
Exactly. Well, I understand that.
And so when people want to cut these programs, they're not really thinking about the millions of families that rely on these programs. My husband and I were both in the band growing up. I played the trombone.
I played the trumpet.
Did you? All right. My husband's
I'm not
a drummer.
musically inclined.
Oh well, sorry.
We can't all be great.
Yeah,
it's true.
But were you in the marching band?
I was indeed.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but for me, the band program kept me engaged and involved in school.
Yeah.
I loved that was my family.
Oh, definitely. Oh, yeah. And that'll send me on a whole other tangent. I don't even want to talk about Contest of Champions being canceled.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
We got Nazis coming.
We have Nazis.
We do.
They're coming to Murphy from my alma mater as well. I graduated MTSU 2006, and those bastards are coming.
They've killed our biggest statewide band competition. MTSU has canceled it this year due to safety precautions and also just they don't want to eat up the city's resources that are going to be needed to deal with the Nazis.
Yeah. But so I think I can talk.
Sorry,
about
I know. Yeah, because it's so disturbing.
It is so disturbing. But I think the people that are making these budget cuts need to understand how real families, working families, rely on some of these programs.
Exactly.
And so we need to have people in Washington that get it. And, one of the things that I like to say is if you want to change the way Washington works, you have to change the kind of people that you put there. Yeah. Right? And so, again, that's why I'm stepping forward, because I get it. And I know how to balance my budget. I feel like it's very important for our government to function with a balanced budget.
It is entirely.
And
we will not continue to be a government if we don't balance this budget.
Absolutely.
Sooner or later, people will stop giving us money.
Absolutely.
Someone else will step up into our role, and they'll stop taking care of us.
And I love this country. So I don't want that to happen.
That's my thing, is we can't ruin the thing with debt.
You guys heard it here, folks. Democrats don't hate a balanced budget. Okay,
it's really the issue.
It might be the first time you've actually considered that.
Usually it's an issue of they're not able to balance the budget. Normally we assume that liberal arts don't involve mathematics.
Yeah, if you do.
Well, so there you go. See,
had to do it.
That's pretty funny. All right. That was
sure
good.
you weren't a drummer?
That was good. If you look at historically. When you look at the deficit, I know that these numbers. Democrats have typically reduced the deficit.
Yeah. We can talk about causes and why, but
if you look at the numbers,
really
historically,
really when we decided we were just going to destroy the national debt was under George W. Bush and the name of national security and just ramping up.
Yes.
All kinds of military-industrial costs.
Yes.
That was the first issue. And then we gave the reins to Obama, and he just kept that trend going. And he did the same thing with the national defense budget, definitely. I mean,
oh, well, okay.
Yeah,
the deficit then, overall.
The national deficit, like the actual, or national debt, I apologize, not
well,
the deficit.
Debt and deficit are not the same thing.
They are.
Right.
No, yes, it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the issue is that the overall debt that we owe continues to just become more and more outrageous.
Yeah.
And we've got to get that in check as well. It's not just about a deficit and a budget and things like this.
Well, it is when you think about, how are we going to pay that back?
Exactly.
We have to reduce the deficit in order to pay back the debt.
Exactly.
And so, you have to...
You've got to start with the balanced budget. And
that's right.
The more you can trim from it, the faster we're paying back the debt.
Very true.
And that's really the major concern that I've got. That's number one, A1, day one.
Yeah.
I don't care what we've got as far as, government programs. I'm fine with it. How are they being paid for? How are they being run? Are they being run efficiently? Did they work better in the private sector? Generally speaking...
Don't forget there's a baby in that bathwater, too. Right?
Well, exactly. No, I agree with you.
That's the balancing act. That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to is that, if you're really just spending it without finding a way to pay for it in any kind of way, it's a short-term solution that's causing a massive long-term problem.
Yeah. And I would say if you just cut taxes, you're also not bringing in the revenue streams that will help to pay for the debt as well. So I think
that's true.
I think that you have to look at it as a both and.
Oh no, I agree with you there. I mean, it's definitely true.
With RE, your dig with math and
that's definitely true.
That this tax plan that Trump's talking about, that you're not going to find an economist worth their salt that's going to say this is actually going to help. I mean,
exactly.
His own defense of it was preposterous.
Right.
No, I mean I agree with you. Don't get me wrong.
I'm not trying to say
that's not the answer. And I mean, lowering taxes would be awesome, but again, that goes right back to show me how you're paying for it.
Right.
Right. I want to pay less too. How is that going to keep things running?
Right.
How does that keep the lights on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we would all like to pay less.
Yeah.
I don't mind paying what I'm paying because I know that I want my roads to be fixed. I want my I want my food to be regulated. I want to make sure that my food is safe when I eat it, that the school lights are open, that that government runs. So I don't mind paying taxes as long as it's being run efficiently.
Yes.
And I
think that's the biggest thing that sticks in conservatives' craw is that it's not being run efficiently.
And I don't think that Democrats would disagree with you.
Yeah, but that's the issue.
Yeah.
That's really what's.
But it's not just cutting. What just cutting does is it makes sure that the roads don't get fixed.
Sure. Yes, exactly.
It's an oversimplified
solution.
You're taking a hatchet to something that requires a scalpel.
Really, and if you use the scalpel on both ends, there's no reason you couldn't lower taxes.
Absolutely.
But you also have to be able to pay for what you need.
Absolutely.
Right.
Agree. Totally agree.
So can you find us some Republicans that agree?
I think most Republicans will agree with you there. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's a simple concept.
I think it goes back to, though, having the conversation and getting us out of our echo chambers.
Exactly.
Right? And
if we could also de-energize the far end bases on both sides a little bit too, because the crazy progressives and the crazy conservatives are not helping this echo chamber problem.
Yeah.
They're making it so that moderates like Corker are just stepping down and saying, screw it, it ain't worth doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Who am I serving here? A bunch of crazies who are threatening to pull me out of office every time.
Well, Flake is super conservative.
Super conservative.
And he's out. And he recognizes that he's not conservative enough to win a primary.
Which is
scary.
which is frightening.
This isn't normal. No. This is...
No. And that's why people are stepping up.
Yeah.
That would not normally find themselves in this place.
And I support people like you doing that.
Thank you.
That means a lot to us that people you would take time to actually make this attempt and try to help things out. I mean,
because I'll tell you, it's not easy.
No, you just added something else to your plate.
I've been very thankful that I've raised over $100,000 so far this cycle, which is not enough to win yet, but I still have a year. And the wins, I just got that national endorsement, and so I'm hoping that as those types of things continue to draw attention to our campaign here, I think that will continue to build. And
once you got the primary out of the way too, I think if you were to win the primary and be the Democratic nominee, you're going to see a lot more funding coming your way just for that simple reason. Like there's only one person to back for the party, start backing that person.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe to bring this towards an end, I mean, let's say you defeat your primary challenger, who He's also a really nice guy we had on our show.
Sure.
Say that happens. What's your strategy for Deja LA, who will almost certainly beat whatever primary challenger he's facing?
Sure. Well, I think that we have I know that we have the numbers in the district. We have the Democratic numbers as an off-cycle election. It's going to be a really interesting election and very unpredictable because we have, of course, governor's races that are going to be heated on both sides.
Yeah.
We have, and during the primary, we have, the Senate race that is starting, heating up on both sides. And so all of those things are going to be getting a lot of attention and driving more people than normal to the polls on an off-cycle election. But voter turnout in our state is ranked 50 out of 50. We are the lowest. We have had the lowest voter turnout in 2016 than any other country in this nation. And as a U.S. government teacher who has made a history of bringing people to the polls with me, that is embarrassing.
Oh yeah, no,
it's devastating.
I mean,
just to bring this back to Spring Hill, which is just north of us, for anybody who's watching doesn't know where we are. But we helped out a little bit with the school board campaign, and I mean, you're talking about vote counts that are just, I mean,
dozens.
Like dozens. Like how few people really care at all about what's going on here, or about your own kids' education. Something like that. It just blew my mind. Just the extraordinarily. They're talking about like 4 and 6% voter turnout.
Yeah, I think it was like 7 point something overall voter turnout for Spring Hill.
It's like the level of apathy. How do you beat the apathy?
Yeah. Well, I think I do think that I think we are changing the conversation in our country overall. I think that having people like Corker step out and say what he said this last week, Flake's coming out and saying what he said. I think that more people are willing to engage in a dialogue that a year ago maybe we weren't having as openly. As a Democrat in the South, I feel like there have been times when I've almost wanted to, I'm a Democrat, and not, because you kind of feel like
it's a bad word,
and,
right?
In certain circles, and I'm a Christian, and in my church, sometimes you're around certain people and you don't know if you want to have that conversation, it can be very divisive, and I think that my hope and what I'm seeing is that is starting to change, that people are willing to start to have that conversation and that dialogue, and that I've had people come up to me. In fact, when I was in Spring Hill last weekend at the UAW Fall Fest they had on Sunday, I was out there, had a table out there. It was great, good time. I spoke to a woman who is Republican, and she can't stand the rhetoric that's up there right now.
I don't think many of us can.
And so she, we talked about some of the issues that she really cared about, and we had some disagreements on some of the issues in terms of, where we stand. But she liked the fact that I was willing to talk to her, listen to her, and that I was somebody who is open-minded and willing to have a conversation. As a U.S. government teacher, I've always been proud that when my students didn't know what side of the political spectrum I am on, because it's not my job to teach my students what to
think, ideology, but
to teach them how to think.
Right.
And so I've always been proud. I understand and value the ideas on both sides. I just have my own, values that I kind of align closer with the Democratic Party, of course.
I would hope so, since you're running this one.
Yeah, no, and I have been my whole life, and but you know what I mean. Like I think that's those boxes, right? Democrat, Republican. It actually has been damaging.
Definitely.
Relationships, and and the last election really saw. You unfriending people, unfriending each other on Facebook. You don't want to sit next to the certain people at church you always sat next to. I thought we were friends. This is why you guys started this, right? You're fermenting opinions.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
you have these strong opinions, but you should be able to come together and talk about these things.
We call it fermenting together. We come together, left, right, center, wherever, and we just halftime we'll have a drink and we're talking issues, but we treat each other like human beings, you know.
Right.
Right. That's what's lost.
And so I think that people are moving back towards that. I think we went through the ugly stage, and we are starting to come back and say, you know what, hey, we're friends. We should be able to have a conversation. And I think people are willing to do that more than they were a year ago. At least that's what I see as I'm out
this was
talking to
right
people.
Before the election a year ago today, basically, like, whew. The level that was at,
I just saw, speaking of that, as a random thing, I saw a link yesterday or something to an article a year ago about how Hillary Clinton is so far ahead in the polls that she doesn't even think about Donald Trump. That was like a quote from her. I was like, well, that really kind of bit you in the bum. You really have to be out there pounding the pavement. Like, you can't just sit back and let poll numbers carry you to victory. Because,
and so that's what, I'm out, I'm talking to people. I'm not just talking to Democrats, I want to talk to the Republicans too. I want to talk to people and hear what are your issues? What are the things that are important to you? And I know that I'm not going to be able to talk to 103,000 people, which is about what I think it's going to take to win. But
you're going to try.
I'm going to try to talk to, and every time I go out to, every weekend I come home and I put, 80 to 100 more people on the mailing list, right? And so it's out, and so voter turnout is something I think that we really have the opportunity to impact right now. A lot of young people, for example, have not voted. Or they voted in 2016 for the first time and it didn't turn out the way they wanted because they were.
Now they're disgusted.
And now they're disgusted. They're like, my vote didn't count. My voice doesn't matter. But I'm here to say that it does count and it does matter. And it's all of our voices collectively need to be as loud and strong as we can to really get the things that we need. Because most of the people are not in those fringe groups.
Yeah,
right. Most of the people are not in those fringe groups. Most of the people kind of, like each other and want to have a civil dialogue. And so I think that, that's what I'm focusing on, is making sure that right now as many people as possible know who I am, Mariah Phillips for Congress in Tennessee's 4th District.
There you go.
But as many people know who I am and can connect with me. Democrats, Republicans, independents, because I have a history of being able to connect with people. At Starbucks, I was a manager for years, literally thousands of customers that I would greet. I didn't care what political party they were in.
Matter.
I cared about them, and I got to know them, and they got to know me, right? And as a teacher, I don't care what political party or ideology your family is part of. I'm going to make sure that you get the best education that you can get, right? That's what I do. And so my goal is to connect as many people personally as I can, but that I can't stop there. I need to make sure that people are getting their friends registered to vote, and that they get involved and engaged in voting. And that actually we're seeing, because of the divisive rhetoric that's happening right now, we're seeing many more people turning out to different types of events and that are excited. When I go to Marshall County, and I was there at the Goats Music and More Fest the other week, and they had it. Their Democratic Party had a table out there, and I went out, worked the table, and people were running up and saying, I'm so glad there's a Democratic Party here, right? Because I didn't know there were other people in Marshall County that thought the way I did, right? And so you're seeing that. You're seeing people stepping out of the shadows that are less afraid to, have opinions and views, and
Well, it's a lot easier to be loud about what you believe when, the party that's in charge, that usually you're massive minority compared to them, when their figurehead is so offensive. It's pretty easy to be like, nah, this guy's a dick, and someone needs to call him a dick, and I'm gonna do that. It's not like,
and thank you, Corker, for
exactly,
that.
Exactly. But it's, it's not like just, calling W a dick, plenty of Republicans are going to look at you and go, no, that's not true, and you're a jerk for even thinking that. Seems like a pretty decent guy to me. Versus Donald Trump's pretty indefensible as far as character goes. If you call him a dick, most people are gonna be like, "Yeah, he is."
He is. But I think that that's getting people involved and engaged in a way that they haven't been before. And so when I go to Marshall County and I go and speak at the Democratic Party meeting, 40 people show up.
Yeah.
I was there. I asked them. I said, "How many people showed up last year? 4, 5?"
Oh yeah,
40 people.
It's been
Murray County.
Yeah,
Murray County. I mean, I've never been there where there's been less than like 30, 35
Our meetings,
people
when I go to the meetings, our meetings are on Tuesday nights, right? And I don't get there right when they start because I'm just getting off of work.
Yeah.
I usually cannot find a seat when I go into the room. I'm usually like packed into a corner or like standing in the doorway,
which
or
is
something
incredible
like that.
for Murray County.
Yeah, I mean it's Murray County, right? Like you said, very conservative area. Very conservatively controlled. You don't even think they're Democrats here, but there are so many. They were coming to the meetings, and these are the most motivated people. Are the ones coming to the meetings. I can't get in the room when I come in 20 minutes late. Like,
And you're seeing that everywhere, and it's not. When I go to Suwanee, which is has a little bit bluer population,
sure,
up on the mountain, but in Franklin County, Grundy County, when I go to these places, I mean, people are showing up.
Yeah.
I've had 4 events now in Grundy County. Between Grundy up in Suwanee.
I don't even think about Grundy County.
But people show up, and it's different people all the time that want to come and meet me and hear what I have to say and get on board. And so it's really exciting because people are stepping out and saying what we have right now is not okay.
Yeah.
And I want to do something to change it. And so that's my mantra is, I want to do something to fix it.
Yeah.
And, and that, again, that's why I'm here.
We're glad to have you here.
Thanks.
I think that's a pretty good note to end on.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that puts a nice bow on everything.
If there's nothing else to add, then I guess we can go ahead and call it a night here.
Sure.
But, well, thanks for joining us. Anyone who's tuning in on YouTube or anything, I'll be sure to check the comments afterwards. But please follow us, like us on Facebook, and check our website, fermentingopinions.com, and then also your website again.
Mariah 4 Congress, the number 4, Mariah4Congress.com. And I have a pretty active Facebook page and Twitter as well. So you can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook.
Fun time.
I'm out there. I'm out there.
All the things.
All the things.
All right. Well, I'm David Popeiden.
I'm James McVeigh.
And we are Fermenting Opinions. You guys take care.